Welcome to SVR IAS Academy. ComeOnIndia.com is our website. In our earlier video lecture, we discussed about Xiamen Summit. While discussing about the BRIC members, instead of South Africa, we mentioned as South America. Please correct it. It is South Africa, which stands for yes. So BRICS has 5 nations. 5 nations are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So 3 countries from Asian continent, 1 country from Africa, and 1 country from South America. BRICS has no representation from North America, Europe, and Australian continent because countries in these continents are considered as developed countries. So BRICS is a group of emerging countries which came together and formed a group. Initially, South Africa is not a member of BRICS. Initially, Brazil, Russia, India, China, 4 countries started this group. Later, in the year 2010, South Africa also joined. BRIC became BRICS in the year 2010. One fact is that the term BRIC was coined by economist Jim O'Neill in the year 2001. In that he said, if all 4 countries, Brazil, Russia, India and China comes together means it will represent 23% of the world GDP based on the purchasing power parity. The first summit of the BRIC was held in the year 2009. In the first meeting in the year 2009, BRICS leaders discussed the state of the global economy and how to repair the global economic crisis, and they also discussed the need for more stable and predictable global reserve currency. At present, US dollar is the global currency, and if any currency acts as a global currency, it should be more stable and it should be more predictable. But in the last 4 to 5 years, the economic growth of the US is coming down and US economy is struggling to come out of the 2008 global financial crisis completely. So US dollar is becoming less predictable and unstable. So fluctuation occurs. Because of the fluctuation, that means exchange in the US dollar with the Indian rupees is increasing, decreasing, and it's not predictable. From the exporters and importers point of view, exchange rate should be more stable so that they can predict the profit and loss and they can do business. So stable exchange rate is very important, and for that the global currency, that is US dollar, should be stable, but it was not stable. That is why in the year 2009 BRIC leaders discussed for alternative global reserve currency. What is the importance of BRICS? BRICS nations represent 3.6 billion population. So out of 700 crore population in the world, 360 crore plus population live in these 5 nations. It means the BRIC countries constitute 40% of the world population. And when we combine the economies of all the 5 nations, they represent approximately 22 to 25% of the gross domestic output or gross world output. What is the meaning of gross world product? We heard about gross domestic product. Then what is gross world product or GWP? Gross world product is the combined national products of all the countries in the world. So the gross world product is defined as the combined gross national product of all the countries in the world. So since 2009, every year BRICS Summit held in the five countries in an alternate manner. In 2016, BRICS Summit was held in India in the place called Goa, the state of Goa, and Goa Declaration was also issued at the end of the summit. 2017 summit was held in the Xiamen city. Xiamen is the place in China. About Xiamen Declaration, we already provided a separate video lecture on the topic. Since 2009, some important institutions has been developed under BRICS cooperation. One is BRICS Forum. BRICS Forum is established by the five countries as an independent international organization. BRICS Forum encourages commercial, political, and cultural cooperation among the five BRICS nations. BRICS nations pledged to provide 75 billion US dollars to boost the lending power of International Monetary Fund, but subject to one condition. In the IMF, the voting share, or you can say quota, of the five nations should be increased. The problem with the World Bank and International Monetary Fund is that both institutions are Western controlled and Western dominated international organizations. It means US has the maximum vote share, or you can say veto power, in these institutions. So simply, to which country World Bank and IMF has to give fund, that is decided by US and European nations. Emerging countries and big countries like India, China, Russia, and Brazil don't have adequate voice in these institutions like World Bank and IMF. That's why for last several years these countries are asking to increase the voting share of the IMF and World Bank. When IMF and World Bank was started in the year 1945 after end of the World War II, at the time the major economies were US and European countries like UK, France and Germany. Fine, but more than 70 years has crossed after establishment of IMF and World Bank, and the economic size of the World Bank, that US, Europe, have declined drastically and they are no more economic superpowers. At the same time, many Asian countries like India, China, Russia are emerging as the global economic growth pole. China and India are the world's fastest growing economies at present. So BRICS nations says that, see, the world is changed and world economy also changed in the last 7 years. So we can't keep the IMF and World Bank quota like earlier. So we need to increase vote share of some countries and decrease the vote share of some countries to reflect the global economic situation at present. So the emerging economies vote share should be increased and quota of the developed countries should be decreased. It is their demand, but the demand has not been accepted. So later, in the year 2014 BRICS Summit, all five nations decided to establish its own development bank. Earlier, it was called as BRICS Development Bank. Later, it has been renamed as New Development Bank. So, New Development Bank is a global multilateral development bank established by BRICS nations. The New Development Bank will be headquartered in the Shanghai city of China. So please remember, the headquarters of the New Development Bank or BRICS Development Bank is Shanghai, is a place in China. The starting capital of the bank is 50 billion US dollars, and all countries, all 5 countries will contribute 10 billion US dollars to the total amount of 50 billion US dollars. So voting share in the bank will be same for all the 5 countries. They are the founding members of New Development Bank. Another important development in the BRICS is establishment of BRICS Contingent Reserve Arrangement. Contingent Reserve Arrangement. In the transaction with the world and exchange rate fluctuation, countries may face currency crunch. Countries may have less forex reserve, or countries' national currencies may be affected by the global financial pressure. At the time, we need to provide support to that country to come out of the short-term currency crunch. For that, BRICS nations have established Contingent Reserve Arrangement. Contingent Reserve Arrangement is a framework for providing protection against global liquidity pressure. IMF also does the same thing. IMF means International Monetary Fund, also does the same job. So it provides short-term fund requirement to the countries to manage their liquidity crunch. The newly established Contingent Reserve Arrangement by the BRICS Development Bank also provides protection against global liquidity pressure. So these are the important institutions established under BRICS cooperation. So let's prepare well on the BRICS. The topic comes in the GS paper 2, international organizations. So let's prepare well, and all the best for your IAS exam preparation.